Hi guys, welcome to the next Q&A. In this one I'm going to ask a question Peter mentioned a while ago, and he was half joking a little bit, but it was about asking what's the progress on the book for training and fitness when you're older than 40. So for those of you who don't know about that, one of the books that I'm going to write is a follow-up to my first one, The Fighter's Body, which is all about training for martial arts self-defense and just a physical training part, nutrition, and so on. And I always wanted to do a follow-up to that one because it's a book that did extremely well. There was a lot of interest for it, so and I figured that there would also be an interest in a follow-up book, a second volume, so to speak. Now, I wrote that book a long time ago. It's been almost 20 years now. So obviously I've gotten older, I've learned a lot more. Sports science has evolved, and we know a lot more than we know then. Some things have changed, some things have stayed the same. So my intention was to write a book that is a follow-up to The Fighter's Body, and that focuses on the older athlete, which is what I am now. I'm almost 46 now. So things change as you get older, and my take is to write with that specific topic in mind. Is okay, so now that I'm an older athlete and a practitioner of martial arts, how do I train now as opposed to when I wrote the first book, which is vastly different. This book is still in the information gathering stage, so I've explained this before. The way that I write is I have I think it's about almost 30 ideas for books now at different levels of, I wouldn't say having them finished, but they're in production. Some of them I might never do, that eventually while I'm gathering ideas, I figure out that, well, no, that doesn't work, or I don't see how I can make this into a full book. And others eventually become the books that you guys see in the end. Now, what I'm doing right now with the second volume of The Fighter's Body is just still gathering ideas. And I've got a bunch of them already, but not enough to start writing. So that's why I haven't started with anything just yet. And I don't plan to. As you guys know, I'm working on my Boxing for Self-Defense book series. Then I have some more stuff planned about facing your fears of fighting in the ring. So that's also something that will come first. The main reason why I'm not doing that Fighter's Body second volume right now is because it demands a lot of research. And I'm talking a lot. It took a full year to research the first one, and that was with me splitting the work with Lauren Christensen, who is my co-author. So with that first book, so it is a lot of work. Right now, I don't want to invest that time in it. That's just a personal preference of mine. I don't want to invest the time of spending of just hours and hours every single day researching everything. I don't enjoy it at this stage of my life for various reasons. I'm too busy with other stuff. My kids are almost, leaving the house, so I want to spend time with them as well. So there's a bunch of reasons. I'll get to it, but anyway, that's the introduction. What can I say about what it's like to train as an older martial artist? Well, first of all, getting older sucks, and it's not the age; it's just the mileage. As you guys know, this is pretty much the first time that you see me without my arm in a sling since my surgery. It's because now after 3 weeks, I can finally, start relaxing, and then I can let my arm hang throughout the day. I can't lift it, obviously. I still have to keep it immobile, but I can let it hang next to me, and if I'm careful, there's no issues. Next week, then I can start my rehab for real. All that I've done now is pre-rehab. I've done some pendulum swings, which is what the physical therapist at the hospital said that I could do. Anything else is out of the question. But so what it's like? Well, first of all, you get injuries. That's the first thing. Injuries you don't, the type of injuries you don't get when you're in your teens or 20s or even 30s. And a lot of it boils down to either overtraining, in my case, poorly designed training, and basically being a little bit out of luck with your specific body. just quickly going over that. So first of it is overtraining. One of the biggest mistakes I made, and I see so many martial artists do that, and especially guys who lift weights also, is not enough rest. A lot of hard training, but not enough rest. You don't get stronger or better when you train. It's the recovery phase that comes afterwards that heals your body, makes it stronger, faster, and so on. And that is the key thing that I was fortunate to learn it. I think in time, I'd already done plenty of damage to my body, but I think it could have been a whole lot worse when I discovered periodization many years ago, and when I started training differently with, especially with the strength training that I did, because I did a lot of that. So a lot of it is also is just getting smarter with how you train, and in my opinion, it's not that difficult to train harder. Everybody can do that. It's just you add reps, you add weight, you add intensity, you do more complex exercises. There's a bunch of ways you can train harder. That's not that difficult. To do it in a smart way, that's very difficult. And the smart way typically means periodization, so knowing training in cycles and having different cycles and rest periods and so on, but mainly working on your recovery. Recovery is several things. First of all, get enough sleep. Get 8 hours of sleep. You don't get 8 hours. I mean, you might think that you don't need that you're good enough with 5 to 6 hours. It's fine. Your body disagrees with you in the long run. There are a few rare exceptions. They're extremely rare. The chance that you and I are those exceptions is very slim. So why would you do stupid stuff with the assumption that you are the exception to the rule, where so many people have proven that it's a bad idea to do it? So get your rest. That's the main thing. The way I work now, well, as soon as I can, actually, what will happen is that I'll explain my specific protocols later, but it's going to be cycles of 4 to 5 weeks with then 1 week off, where I do very little training and then just keep that going. And then once I finish my rehab in 6 to 12 months, then I can start with a regular training schedule again, which will be slightly different. But I'll get to that later. So that's the first thing. Rest enough. Make sure that you get adequate recuperation and that you don't just go all out all the time. It doesn't work. It just simply doesn't work. And the biggest hindrance there is that you feel as if you are not doing enough. Especially martial artists, I've noticed that, and people who spend a lot of time in the gym. If you don't train hard, you're feeling like you're just losing, wasting your time. It feels like you're not doing enough. Feels like you're slacking off. It's not true, but that's what it feels like. And then you push when you shouldn't push. Overtraining is one of the most common mistakes you see in martial arts and weightlifting. I've seen it in many different sports, but that's the two activities where I see it the most. So don't make that mistake. Get enough rest. That's the first thing. Let me see what else did I mention in the beginning, because I'm blanking out a little bit now. So getting rest is one thing, and another thing is switching. As you get older, your body changes. One of the things that we know is that, especially as a man, you do lose muscle mass, you do lose strength, but not necessarily in the same order. And I was just the other day, I was in a discussion online in a private forum about this, is that as you get older, your body changes, and if you keep on training, you can minimize the negative effects of those changes tremendously, but you have to be smart about it. And one of the things we know that as men is that you're going to lose muscle mass. So some form of strength training is very important, in my opinion. You don't have to lift heavy, but you do have to do some sort of resistance training to stay strong. Not just for your muscles, for locomotion, for moving your body around, but also for overall health, for the way that your hormonal system works, growth hormone and so on. So for all those different reasons, the specific biology of a man, it tends to do better if you do some sort of resistance training. I could go, it's an oversimplification, but I think you get the point. Alongside with that, what I think is very important as you get older when you train is that you spend a lot of time on all the smaller muscles, the stabilizers. So there's I'm going to simplify a little bit. Look at it. Every time you move, you've got three systems working. You've got prime movers, secondary movers, and stabilizers. Let's take the bench press because most people know that one. So you're lying down on the ground and then you push a weight, or on a bench, and you push a weight up and down. That translates into, let's say, a straight line punch. I'm just giving you two examples so that you can immediately find out. So if I straighten out my arm when I'm standing here and I'm trying to put a lot of strength in that punch, so I'm making an explosive movement, so my chest muscles will be the prime movers. They will do most of the work as I bring my arm forward, especially if I lift my elbow up to the side as opposed to tucking it in. It doesn't matter why I punch that way, that's just an example. The secondary mover will be my tricep and my shoulder muscles. They will aid the movement. They will give it a little bit of extra power. They are involved, but they're not a primary engine. They're a secondary engine. And then you've got a whole bunch of other muscles that will stabilize everything that you're doing. For instance, in your shoulder, as I straighten out my arm here, the rotator cuff muscles, supraspinatus, infraspinatus, and so on, they will make sure that my shoulder joint is stable enough so that I can actually do a correct technique. And there's a bunch more stabilizers in your body. Here's a point. Primary movers and secondary movers, most people when they lift or when they train, they take care of those. But the stabilizer muscles and the stabilizing systems, people tend to neglect. And there's a bunch of them that they need your attention as you get older. For instance, one of the reasons is that the space between your vertebrae in your spine gets smaller. So that means that you have less flexibility in your back. That means that everything that keeps that together needs to be, in my opinion, kept as strong as you possibly can keep it, so that you don't mess up your back, you don't mess up your joints and so on. These kinds of exercises are typically boring when you are used to heavy lifting and high intensity training. However, they are what allow you to keep on moving well. Whether it's for sports, athletics, everyday movement, working in the garden, martial arts, self-defense, fighting, and so on. It doesn't matter. It's about movement, quality of movement. So work your stabilizers as you get older. Work the deep core muscles, the deep back muscles, the deep abdominal muscles. Make sure that your piriformis muscle, it's right underneath your buttocks. It's a really small one, but if that one is messed up, your back can go out and you can get a lot of problems. Make sure that that one is stretched enough and that it's functioning correctly. Just think of it as just like any piece of equipment that is, maybe it's a really good piece of equipment, but as it gets older, wear and tear, you need to do more maintenance. It's not about putting a new engine in there. It's about making sure that it gets enough oil and lubricant so that it can function correctly. That's the point. So make sure you do that a lot. So a lot of rest, making sure that you work on the stabilizers as well. And then the final point is that you need to be a little bit lucky. The older I get, the more I discover that I'm pretty unlucky in the body that I got from my parents when they combined their DNA. Turns out I have a bad back. The shape of my vertebrae is not very good. The nerve channel in the center of my spine is a little bit more narrow than average. It's still fine for everyday life and I can be very active. It's really bad for the extreme stress that I put it under when I was younger. Second thing, my body cannot handle the amount of muscle mass that I used to have. It's been almost 4 years now since I went to a neurosurgeon and he said, look, your spine can't handle that muscle mass. The example he gave, and I've mentioned this before, is that I have a really tiny foundation and I put a skyscraper on top of it. It's a foundation that's good for a small house and I put a skyscraper on top of it. He says the foundation can't hold it. So you need to cut that out. And I said I can do body weight training, push-ups and so on, light weights. I can do a bunch of stuff like yoga type exercises where you strengthen and stretch at the same time. All that kind of stuff is great, but no more heavy lifting done. And I haven't. I've lost a huge amount of muscle mass. I'm not small by any means, but I used to be a lot more more muscular than I am now. But I feel better now, so that's the difference. So that's one thing. I didn't know that about my spine until I developed two bulging discs, L4, L5, and I had extreme back pain. And my back blew out. I would fall over in the couch and I couldn't get up. So that kind of stuff happened. And I started looking where this is coming from. They did an MRI. I went to the neurosurgeon and then he told me. I had never suspected that I had a bad back. I didn't know. Another example, with my shoulder surgery, my surgeon told me after I woke up, he said, look, what happens is that you've got the muscle that got torn off here, supraspinatus, it goes underneath the shoulder blade, as I explained before in previous videos. And then the shoulder blade, the edge is called the acromion. And there's 4 types. I have type 3. Type 4 is actually worse, but type 3 means that the shape of that point of the shoulder blade is actually really bad for that muscle. And as we get older, that gap that the muscle needs to go into to function gets smaller. So the shape of my shoulder blades was grating on it and causing inflammation, weakening it, and eventually it snapped. So that's the kind of thing that, again, I had no idea. Sure, I had problems with my shoulders for years, but I didn't know that that was the cause. And the only way to know that would be to do either an MRI or the surgery, like my surgeon cutting me open, looking inside and seeing that, okay, this is what it looked like. He's got a type 3 acromion. Let's grind it off and file it off so that it's a better shape. Which probably means that I'm going to have that done on my left shoulder as well. But I'll see. I'm seeing my surgeon next week, so I'll know more then. But I don't want to have the other shoulder, the muscle tear off and need to reattach it. I want to avoid that. And here's my point. I had no idea that I had that type of shoulder. And these are 2 examples. I could name you many more that I've encountered while studying, while working with clients and so on, of people who have very specific, I wouldn't call it faults or errors in the way their bodies are made up, but it's just small stuff that makes you predisposed to certain problems or that doesn't allow you to do certain things. For instance, depending on squats in a gym, a lot of people go on and on about squat technique. If you look at the bone in your upper leg, if it's like this, I'll do it like this, it'll be easier. If this is your leg, your upper leg, and you've got your hips here, you've got your other leg here, and if you look at the bone, there's this little piece here that sticks into it, okay, and that goes into your hip, goes into it. The shape and the angle that bone is in and how long it is and so on, that's very different per individual. And there's huge differences. The shape of the inside of your hip can be very different from one person to the other. We call it a ball and socket joint, but that doesn't mean that it's a perfectly round ball and that the socket on the inside is perfectly slick and round also. There could be it's called the trochanter, which is the head of the part of the bone that sticks into the hip. It could be in a regular shape, and the inside of your hip might also be in a regular shape, and they might be locking together in certain movements, which means that it's bone on bone and you cannot open your hips more. That's it. No matter how much you stretch, if that's the case with you, you cannot open your hips more. It's a mechanical issue. It's not a muscular issue. It's not flexibility. It's just bone on bone. It doesn't move anymore. If that's you and you've been stretching like crazy and you might have actually injured your hips trying to force it, who knew? You'll only know when you have the surgery or when they see that, well, that's the case with you. And there's a bunch of other things that we don't know that we are running around with until they start breaking down. Long explanation. Here's the point. You tend to discover those kinds of things when you get older. It's when you get 40, 45, 50 and so on, that's when that kind of stuff starts to break down, if you're lucky. If you're unlucky, it starts earlier, but most people, that's around the age when it starts breaking down. So you spend a lot more time figuring out how your specific body reacts to training and then working around those problems. and once you know they exist, trying to avoid that it gets worse, or that in my case, if I would have known that I had the type 3 acromion in my right shoulder, I would have had it taken care of years ago. I wouldn't have waited, but I didn't know. I only know because the muscle tore off. So and now that means that 6 months of pain because it was in July, and now I've got 3 months of intensive rehab and 6 to 12 months of rehab. So I'm losing more than a year or to a year and a half because of something that is inherently wrong, air quotes, with my shoulders. I didn't know, but that's a lot of training time that is lost. So my advice would be then, as you get older, be very aware that these kind of things exist, and just try to figure out ways to either fix them if you can, or work around them. You do not want to be a cripple as you get older. That's not the point. The point of martial arts and self-defense is to defend your own body and get better, not to break it down. So the more you know about what is specifically unique to your own body composition and structure, the more you can prevent injuries that are waiting for you if you don't manage them correctly. As again, my shoulder, and that's the case for me. I didn't know. Well, I'm stuck with it now. So that long explanation, but it's no longer a quick Q&A, it's a long one. But I wanted to do this one because Peter asked me this one a long time ago, and I still haven't started on the book, so he's been waiting on an answer for a while now. So that's it. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions, let me know in the comments on Patreon on the post for this video. Also, don't forget to give me some more questions because I think I've always finished all of them. So just give me some more questions and I will get to them. Thanks and take care.